The desert was quiet after the explosion, too quiet. The blackened wreck of the hub smoldered in the distance, its twisted remains scattered across the sands. Syria stood with her people, her chest heaving, sweat and dust clinging to her skin. Around her, the survivors whispered in awe. For the first time since the war began, the sky was clear, no red eyes, no buzzing wings. Yet Marcus didn't celebrate. He stood apart, scanning the horizon with cold focus. His armor still smoked from the battle, his rifle low at his side. Syria walked toward him, her voice soft but sharp. "Why do you not rejoice? We destroyed it. We are free." He shook his head slowly. "You're free for today, but not tomorrow." Her heart sank. "How many more are there?" "Dozens. Maybe hundreds," Marcus said, his jaw tight. "Each hub controls a swarm. Kill one, you cut off a limb. But the beast lives, and somewhere someone is guiding them all." The weight of his words pressed heavy on her chest. She looked back at her people, their fragile smiles, their tired faces. They thought this victory meant survival. But Marcus was right, it was only borrowed time. Still, something in her refused to let despair take root. For the first time, she believed her people had a chance, because she no longer stood alone. The survivors gathered around her, their eyes waiting for her command. The older warrior who had stormed out was gone, his pride leading him into silence of the sands. Now she was their voice. And Marcus, though human, had become their shield. Syria straightened, ignoring the ache in her. "Ribs, then we will keep fighting. Not as blind fools, but with eyes open. If the enemy adapts, we will adapt. If it takes every drop of blood, we will endure." Her people murmured agreement, but some looked at Marcus with unease. One of them spoke trembling. "And the human, will he lead us now?" Syria turned. To Marcus, he met her gaze steadily, neither asking nor demanding. For a long moment, she said nothing, her pride and her truth warring in her chest. Then she spoke clear and strong. "He is not our master, but he is our ally. Without him, I would be dead. Without him, we would still be hunted. If you cannot see that, then you are already lost." The words surprised even her. Once she would have never admitted such things. Now they felt as natural as the desert wind. Marcus gave a faint nod, respect flickering in his eyes. "We'll need more than allies. We'll need to fight together. And to do that, you'll have to listen." Syria smirked faintly, though her eyes softened. "Then speak, human." "This time I will listen." The survivors moved to gather supplies. From the wreckage, bits of machine and shards of black metal littered the sand, and Marcus began showing them how to use it, how to fashion traps, weapons, tools from the pieces of their enemy. Syria watched in silence, learning, memorizing. Every lesson he gave struck deep. By nightfall, they had turned the ruins into an outpost. Fires burned within the cave, weapons piled in makeshift racks, watch positions set along the ridge. Syria stood at the edge, staring out at the vast desert. She thought of her arrogance, of every moment she had refused Marcus's words. Each mistake had nearly cost her life, nearly doomed her people. Pain had been her punishment, but it had also been her teacher. Pride had blinded her, but it had also forced her to grow. Marcus joined her, his armor off now, his face lined with exhaustion. He stood beside her in silence for a long time before speaking. "You've changed." She turned her head, her silver hair catching the firelight. "No, I was forced to see truth. You didn't change me. Pain did." He gave a faint, tired smile. "Pain's a good teacher, but a harsh one." Syria looked at him for a long moment. Then, with a voice quieter than the desert night, she said, "Perhaps humans are not fools. Perhaps they are necessary." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That's as close to a compliment as I'll ever get, isn't it?" She almost laughed, almost. "Do not get used to it." But in her heart, She knew the truth. Without this human, she would have died in the sand. Without him, her people would have vanished into the desert winds. Pride had told her she knew better. Pain had proven her wrong. And in the end, it was not arrogance that saved them. It was trust. The stars burned bright above the desert, endless and vast. For the first time, Syria looked at them not with fear, but with resolve. The war was far from over. More hubs waited, more battles loomed. But she would no longer walk blindly into pain. She would walk beside the human dot, and together, they would give the galaxy reason to fear. Marcus carried Solari through the trembling halls of the outpost. The lights flickered, and the air shook with the sound of weapons striking metal. Outside, human and council ships clashed in orbit, sending bursts of fire across the void. Yet, Marcus moved with steady focus, each step purposeful. Solari clung to him weakly, her breath uneven but alive. For the first time, she felt that death might not claim her so easily. As they turned a corner, Marcus stopped suddenly. Ahead, a squad of council guards blocked the hallway, weapons raised. Their leader sneered. "Hand her over, human. She is council property." The word property made Solari's blood run cold. She had heard the whispers before, that the council viewed active girls as tools, not lives. But hearing it now spoken so plainly broke something inside her. She trembled, burying her face against Marcus's shoulder. Marcus's jaw tightened. He set Solari down gently against the wall, then stepped forward, standing between her and the soldiers. "She's not property," he said coldly. "She's alive. And if you can't see that, then you'll have to go through me." The guards laughed, their metallic armor clinking as they raised their rifles. "One human against 10 soldiers, you won't last long." The words had barely left his mouth before Marcus moved. His sidearm flashed with precise fire, striking weapons from their hands instead of killing. Then he charged forward, closing the distance before the stunned soldiers could react. His fists struck with brutal efficiency, knocking them down one by one. In seconds, the squad was sprawled on the floor, groaning in pain. Marcus stood over them, his breath steady, his eyes blazing with defiance. Solari could only stare. She had seen warriors before, trained soldiers with perfect discipline. But Marcus was different. He fought not with cold calculation, but with raw fury, as if every strike carried the weight of a promise he refused to break. When he returned to her side, she whispered, "Why do you fight so hard?" He looked at her, wiping blood from his knuckles. "Because you're worth it." The words stunned her. No one had ever said such a thing to her. In her world, her worth had always been measured by what she could give the council, by how long she could remain active. But here, this human spoke as if her life had meaning beyond rules or systems. She felt tears sting her eyes. Though she quickly turned her face away, they continued deeper into the outpost, heading toward the docking bay. Marcus's communicator crackled, a human voice coming through the static. "Extraction window closing in 6 minutes. Get to the ship now," Marcus answered without hesitation. "We're moving. Keep the engines hot." Solari's weak steps quickened at his side. She had never left her world before. The thought of being taken aboard a human ship filled her with both fear and strange anticipation. As they reached the docking bay, the scene was chaos. Flames licked the walls, ships exploded in the distance, and the roar of engines shook the ground. Human soldiers fought council troops in brutal clashes across the open space. The smell of smoke and burning metal filled the air. Solari's legs wavered, and Marcus caught her again, shielding her from the storm. He spotted his ship ahead, a dark, sleek vessel with glowing engines ready to launch. But between them and the ship stood a figure unlike the others. A tall alien commander, clad in obsidian armor, blocked their path. His eyes burned with authority, and his weapon hummed with deadly energy. He raised it slowly, aiming at Marcus. "You don't understand what you're doing," the commander said. His voice was calm, but every word carried threat. "If humans continue this, you will doom not just her, but the galaxy itself." Marcus narrowed his eyes. "I understand enough. You've let them die for generations, and you call it order. We won't stand by anymore." The commander's gaze shifted to Solari, who leaned weakly against Marcus's arm. "She cannot survive without us," he said. "And you, human, are only delaying the inevitable. Do you really think you can fight against nature?" Solari's chest tightened. She wanted to shout, to deny his words, but her voice failed her. The commander's gaze pierced her, and she felt the weight of centuries pressing down. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was only delaying her end. But then she felt Marcus's hand tighten protectively around hers. He stepped forward, his voice a growl. "Nature doesn't decide everything. We do, and I'll prove it." The commander raised his weapon, and Marcus pulled his sidearm, both of them locked in deadly standoff. Solari's heart pounded. Around them, the war raged, but in that single moment, everything narrowed to the clash about to unfold. She realized then that her survival was more than her own fight. It was the spark that could decide the war itself. She whispered softly, though neither man heard her, "Please, human, don't let me fade like the others." Her words vanished into the storm, but her heart carried them, tethered to the one man who dared defy the universe for her. The docking bay shook as explosions rippled through the outpost. Flames and smoke blurred the edges of the battlefield, but all Solari could see was the standoff between Marcus and the alien commander. The commander's weapon hummed louder, glowing with unstable energy. Marcus stood unflinching, his sidearm steady, his jaw set like stone. Between them, Solari's fate hung like a fragile thread. The commander spoke again, his voice calm but sharp as a blade. "You think you're saving her, human, but you don't understand what she is. Inactivity is not sickness, it is balance. When you fight it, you break what holds our people together. Save her, and you condemn millions." His words echoed with authority, almost convincing, almost heavy enough to crush hope. Solari trembled. For a moment, she wondered if he was right. Was she truly a danger to her own people just by living? Marcus didn't waver. His voice cut through the smoke and chaos. "Balance? That's your excuse for letting them die? You've built your order on silence and graves. Maybe you're afraid of what happens if they live, afraid of what happens when they learn the truth." He stepped forward, closing the gap. The commander's weapon shook for the first time, not from weakness but from anger. In that moment, a stray blast struck the ceiling above. Metal groaned and collapsed. Solari screamed as the structure fell, but Marcus moved like lightning, shoving her out of harm's way and rolling to the side as debris crashed where they had stood. Dust filled the air. The commander fired, the bolt slicing past Marcus's shoulder, burning a line across his armor. Marcus gritted his teeth, returning fire. The clash had begun. The commander fought with precision, every shot calculated, every strike deliberate. Marcus fought with fury, every movement born of raw instinct and unyielding will. Sparks lit the bay as their weapons clashed against walls and machinery. Human soldiers tried to push forward to help, but the fight was too dangerous, too close. Solari could only watch, her heart racing faster than it had in weeks. Each blast felt like it tore at her chest, not because it struck her, but because it might strike him. Marcus dove behind cover, his breathing heavy. The wound on his shoulder burned, but he pressed forward anyway. "I'm not letting her die," he growled to himself, his knuckles white around his weapon. The commander advanced, his armor gleaming, his eyes like fire. "You cannot fight destiny, human. You are nothing against what is written." Marcus's laugh was short, bitter. "Then I'll rewrite it." He leapt from cover, charging head-on. The two collided in brutal combat. Marcus slammed his fist into the commander's helmet. sparks flying. The commander retaliated with a strike to Marcus's ribs, making him stumble. But Marcus didn't stop. Every blow, every strike, carried the same defiance that had carried him through battles before. Solari gasped with each hit, her hands gripping the floor, wishing she had strength enough to fight beside him. Then something inside her shifted. The device Marcus had pressed against her wrist earlier still pulsed faintly, its warmth spreading deeper now. Her chest no longer felt as heavy. Her vision, once dim, began to sharpen. She realized her body was responding, not fading. The human's presence, his defiance, was not only keeping her alive in spirit. It was awakening something inside her, something the council had always feared. She forced herself to her feet, her weak legs trembling but moving. "Marcus!" she cried. Her voice carried louder than she thought possible, echoing across the bay. Both fighters turned their heads for just an instant. In that moment, she saw Marcus's eyes full of fire but also full of something else. Trust. He believed in her. Not as a fragile dying girl, but as someone who could stand. That belief filled her veins with fire. Solari reached for a fallen guard's weapon. Her hands shook, her arms weak, but she raised it anyway. The commander saw her and sneered. "Foolish child. You cannot even stand." He turned his weapon toward her. Marcus's eyes widened. Time seemed to slow. With the last of her strength, Solari pulled the trigger. The shot struck true, slamming into the commander's side. His armor flared with sparks, and he staggered backward, stunned. Marcus seized the opening. He charged forward, driving his shoulder into the commander and forcing him to the ground. With a final strike, he disarmed the alien and held his weapon to his throat. The commander's breathing was heavy, but his eyes still burned. "You don't know what you've done," he spat. "If they all survive, the galaxy will burn." Marcus leaned close, his voice ice. "Better to burn free than to die in chains." Solari collapsed to her knees, the weapon slipping from her hands. Her chest heaved, but her body felt different, stronger, alive. For the first time in her life, she had fought against her fate and won. As Marcus approached her, helping her back to her feet, she whispered, You gave me more than life. You gave me a reason to fight." Outside, the human ship roared, engines ready to launch. Marcus looked at her, then at the war raging in the skies. "We're not done," he said firmly. "Saving you is just the beginning. If humans can keep you alive, then every girl deserves the same chance." Solari nodded, her eyes shimmering with new light. Together, they moved toward the ship, carrying with them not just survival, but the spark of a rebellion that could ignite the galaxy. The human ship tore free from the docking bay, engines blazing as it shot into the blackness of space. Alarms screamed across the outpost below, but none dared pursue immediately. Marcus guided Solari to a seat near the center of the ship, strapping her in as the vessel shook. Human soldiers moved with precision, some tending to wounds, others monitoring the battle outside. Yet every eye kept drifting toward the alien girl who sat among them. Solari felt their stares, but Marcus stayed by her side, a wall against the storm. Through the viewing screen, Solari saw the stars stretch into endless streaks as the ship jumped into faster-than-light travel. The weight in her chest loosened. Further, the warmth from Marcus's device spreading through her like a tide. For the first time since her sickness began, she felt strength instead of weakness, yet confusion filled her. How was this possible? Why could humans do what entire alien councils could not? She turned to Marcus, her voice quiet. "Why me?" Marcus's eyes softened, though his face was still lined with exhaustion. "Because your life matters. And because if we can save you, then we can save every girl they left to die." His words were steady, but his hands tightened into fists. Solari saw the anger beneath his calm. He wasn't only fighting for her. He was fighting for something larger, something that made humans terrifying to the Council. The ship's commander approached, a scarred woman with sharp eyes. "Marcus," she said firmly, "Council fleets are regrouping. They'll brand us traitors for what we've done." Marcus rose to meet her gaze. "Let them. If the galaxy wants war over this, then so be it. But we don't turn our backs on life." The commander gave a small nod. She didn't argue. Humans had always been known for reckless defiance, but this defiance was different. It carried purpose. Solari listened, her heart pounding. She realized then that her survival was more than just her own. She was proof, living proof, that what the Council called inactivity wasn't destiny. It was control. And if humans could break that control, the entire system the Council had built would collapse. She whispered, almost to herself, "They'll come for me." Marcus heard. His hand rested gently on her shoulder. "Then let them. They'll find we don't scare easy." Hours passed. The ship reached a hidden human outpost far beyond the Council's reach. Solari was guided into a medical wing, though Marcus stayed close. Human doctors studied her carefully, their eyes widening at the signs of life returning to her fading body. They whispered among themselves, noting the strange reactions, her pulse stabilizing, her skin glowing faintly, her strength growing by the hour. One finally said, almost in awe, "She's recovering, truly recovering." The room fell. Silent. Solari's breath caught. Recovering. She had never thought she would hear that word tied to her life. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they were not from fear. Marcus crouched beside her bed, his rough hand brushing away one tear. "You see? It's not hopeless. You're living proof." She smiled weakly, her heart swelling with something she didn't fully understand, gratitude, hope, and something deeper when she looked into his eyes. But the moment was short-lived. The outpost's alarms blared, shaking the walls. A human soldier rushed in, Council fleet approaching. "They must have tracked us." The doctors scattered, securing their work. Soldiers prepared for battle. Marcus stood tall, his weapon already in hand. He turned to Solari. "Stay here. You're not ready for this." But Solari shook her head. Her voice trembled, but her eyes burned with fire. "If I hide, I'm no different from the girls who died without fighting. I want to stand." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. He saw the determination in her, fragile but real. He gave a sharp nod. "Then stand with me. But remember, you're not alone anymore." He guided her to the armory, where soldiers moved with urgency. Solari's hands shook as she accepted a simple weapon. It felt heavy, unnatural, but when Marcus helped her grip it, she felt strength in her arms. He leaned close, whispering so. Only she could hear. "This isn't about killing. It's about refusing to let them decide your fate." The Council fleet arrived in orbit, ships blotting out the stars. Their message came through, cold and commanding. "Surrender the alien girl, or your entire outpost will be destroyed." The human commander laughed bitterly, muttering, "Typical." Marcus stepped forward, standing before the transmission screen. "You'll destroy us anyway. But know this, she's alive and the galaxy will know it. You can't bury the truth forever." Solari stood behind him, her chest rising and falling with a new strength. She no longer felt like a dying girl waiting for an end. She felt like a spark in the darkness, when the Council feared more than armies. The room filled with tension as the soldiers prepared for battle, eyes fixed on their human leader and the alien girl who defied death itself. As the first blasts from the Council ship struck the outpost shields, Solari whispered to Marcus, her voice steady despite the storm. "You didn't just save me, you gave me something to fight for." Marcus turned, his expression fierce but softened by her words. "Then fight with us, because this is just the beginning." And as the battle for the truth began, Solari knew one thing with certainty: humans were dangerous not because of their weapons, but because of their refusal to let anyone die quietly in chains. The human outpost shook under the first wave of council fire. The shields flared bright, holding for now, but every soldier knew it would not last. Alarms screamed, voices shouted orders, and the air thickened with urgency. Yet in the middle of the storm, Solari stood with Marcus, her weak frame no longer trembling. For the first time, she did not feel like prey. She felt alive. Marcus moved through the command center, giving orders to the crew. Hold the shields, focus fire on their engines. Don't waste shots. His calm voice steadied the humans around him, but Solari noticed the tension in his jaw. He knew the odds. The council had numbers, power, and control of half the galaxy. But humans had something else, something the council had never understood. The will to fight even when the end seemed certain. A sudden blast rocked the outpost, throwing Solari against the wall. Marcus caught her, steadying her quickly. "Stay close," he said. She gripped his arm tightly, her breath short but steady. "I won't hide," she whispered. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, a silent promise passed between them. Whatever happened, they would face it together. The council fleet hailed again, their voice filling the chamber. "Return the girl, or you will all be destroyed." The human commander glanced at Marcus, waiting. Marcus stepped forward, his voice cold and sharp. "You call her a threat because she's proof you've been lying for centuries. You're not afraid of her death, you're afraid of her life." The council voice hissed with fury. "You have no place in our order. You are chaos." Marcus's reply came like steel. "Then chaos is better than chains." The council fleet launched a second wave, heavier and more brutal. The outpost groaned as its shields flickered. Human ships scrambled to defend, but the battle tilted against them. Solari's chest tightened with fear, but then she felt it again, that strange warmth Marcus had awakened inside her. Her body no longer felt like it was fading. It was burning brighter. She turned to Marcus. "What if it's not only humans? What if I can help too?" He studied her, his brow furrowed. "You're still recovering." But she shook her head, her silver blue eyes glowing faintly now. "I'm alive because of you. Maybe that life means more than survival. Maybe it means I can fight for them, the ones who never had the chance." Marcus's lips curved into a faint, proud smile. "Then let's show them." Together, they moved to the front lines of the defense bay. Human soldiers made room as Solari raised the weapon she had carried since the escape. It still felt heavy, but when she gripped it beside Marcus, she felt unshakable. The battle outside raged, but inside, a spark spread. Soldiers saw not just Marcus, the unyielding human, but Solari, the girl who had been dying and now stood alive, defying the council itself. The council, furious, sent boarding parties. Waves of armored troops stormed the outpost corridors, their weapons flashing. Marcus fought with brutal precision, every strike carving a path. Solari stayed at his side, firing with shaky hands at first, then steadier as adrenaline filled her veins. She felt fear, but she also felt something greater purpose. For every shot she fired, she thought of the girls who had faded without hope, and each trigger pull became an oath. The fighting was savage, the corridors echoing with screams and blasts. Marcus was cut across the arm, blood streaking his armor. But he didn't falter. Solari shielded him once, striking down a soldier who nearly caught him from behind. He turned, meeting her eyes, and nodded with respect. Not as protector to victim, but as warrior to warrior. For Solari, that moment meant more than survival. It meant she was free. Hours stretched like years. The outpost's shields finally collapsed, but by then the human fleet had arrived in force. Dozens of ships poured from hyperspace, guns blazing. Surrounding the Council armada, the tide shifted. For the first time, the Council fleet pulled back, unwilling to lose more ships over a single girl. Their last message came like poison over the comms. "This changes nothing. You cannot save them all." Marcus snarled into the channel. "Watch us." When silence fell, the battlefield was scarred, but the humans stood. Solari collapsed against Marcus, exhausted but alive. The doctors rushed to her, but she waved them off weakly. She wanted to speak while her strength still held. Her voice was soft, but it carried through the chamber. "They called us inactive. They let us die. But look at me. I'm alive. I will not be the last." Her words spread beyond the room. They were recorded, broadcasted across channels, carried through human fleets into the wider galaxy. Every alien girl who had felt the shadow of death over her heart would hear those words. The truth could no longer be buried. Later, as the outpost settled, Marcus sat beside her in the medical wing. His arm was bandaged, his body weary, but his eyes still burned. Solari turned to him, her lips trembling with a faint smile. "You didn't just save me. You gave us all a chance." He squeezed her hand gently. "No, you gave yourself that chance. I just reminded you how to fight." For the first time in history, the galaxy saw something it had never imagined: alien. Girls who refused to fade, and humans who refused to let them. The Council had ruled with silence, but now, silence was broken. And in that fragile moment, as Solari closed her eyes and breathed deeply, not fading, not weak, but alive, the galaxy learned why humans were feared. Not for their weapons, but for their refusal to surrender to Zeph or destiny.